were not on the saline bag. Michael Jackson's fingerprints are not on the syringe that he allegedly used. There's a whole list, if you go through the stipulation, of items that were clearly touched, were clearly handled, empty vials, things of that nature, that don't have fingerprints. You don't always get fingerprints. It depends on oils, perspiration, different things. You don't always get fingerprints. But again, Alberto Alvarez's prints are not on the saline bag. Michael Jackson's fingerprints aren't on the syringe. You don't always get fingerprints. People's 30, we did get a fingerprint. And that's Conrad Murray's on the 100 milliliter vial of propofol that was found in the saline bag. You know, I read to you the instructions verbatim earlier, and one of the instructions was evaluation of defendant's statements. And when you evaluate the truthfulness of the defendant's statements, think about the deception and lies that have been told through numerous witnesses, in this case, by Dr. Murray. To Kenny Ortega commenting, Conrad Murray commenting that he was in perfect health, leave it to me, when Conrad Murray knew exactly the opposite was true. Same statement made to Paul Gongaware, that he was in good health, leave it to me, when he knew exactly the opposite was true. To Randy Phillips, to Kathy Jory, telling Miss Jory during their contract negotiations that Michael was in great health. No mention of anything that was going on behind closed doors. The email that you saw earlier to Bob Taylor in London, where he's commenting that any of these issues raised in the media are not true. To paramedics Seneff and Blunt and the other paramedics that responded, when Conrad Murray willfully denied them the information they requested and willfully denied and failed to mention that propofol was given. To Dr. Cooper and Dr. Wynn, when specifically asked what had happened, when specifically asked what had been given, and he lied. He didn't overlook it. That is insulting to your intelligence. He lied. He lied because there's consciousness of guilt, and he's looking out for himself. He lied to Tim Lopez, saying it was going to be the shipments were going to his clinic in Los Angeles. Defense counsel can't even understand the relevance of Nicole Alvarez's testimony. The propofol shipments, the 4 gallons of propofol were shipped to her apartment that was represented to Tim Lopez as a medical clinic. Surely, Conrad Murray must have lied to Michael Jackson when he ensured that he would be safe. Conrad Murray lied when he said that he insisted on an autopsy. You heard from Dr. Cooper. She said there was an unknown cause of death. It had to be an autopsy case. It had to be a coroner's case. Conrad Murray played no role in that decision whatsoever. Conrad Murray, when you look at his interview, says he got a social team together, a social welfare team, because he was concerned about the family. Dr. Cooper explained to you how that works. That's a UCLA protocol. It had nothing to do with Conrad Murray. Conrad Murray relays that he pulled Michael Jackson's mother aside and pulled his chair up close to her and asked if there was anything he could do. She asked what happened. He didn't know. This grieving mother, still in one of the rooms at UCLA, just looking for answers after Michael Jackson had been pronounced dead. And he pulled his chair up close, those were his words, and he looked at Mrs. Jackson and said he didn't know. Poor Conrad Murray. Ladies and gentlemen, the law is very clear on the issues of causation. And the defense theory that Michael Jackson self-administered is not an unforeseen or extraordinary occurrence. Again, from Conrad Murray's own statement, He described Michael as having a dependency issue on this drug. He said Michael Jackson liked to push it himself. And he is the one that gave Michael Jackson the Valium, the midazolam, the lorazepam, and the propofol, and abandoned Michael Jackson. The people cannot prove exactly what happened behind those closed doors. As I stated earlier, Michael Jackson could give answers, but he is dead. But you know what was happening every night. You know the volume of propofol that was being shipped. You know what was and was not found. And you know Michael Jackson died from propofol intoxication. A natural and probable consequence, a foreseeable, predictable consequence. That is why you don't give propofol in a bedroom. Every doctor agreed on that. There is nothing unusual or unpredictable about what happened. What is unusual or unpredictable is that Michael Jackson lived as long as he did under the care of Conrad Murray in this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, if Conrad Murray felt so deeply for Michael Jackson, if he felt so much for his welfare, then I would say this: actions speak far louder than words. Because what Conrad Murray did is continue the propofol, continue the benzodiazepines when he knew full well what it was doing to him. If, based on no other evidence, you know he knew on May 10th when he recorded that drugged up recording. Ladies and gentlemen, as I started, this was a relationship built on trust. And Michael clearly did trust his life into the hands of Conrad Murray, not only on a nightly basis for the 2 months you know about, but on June 25th, 2009. Conrad Murray brought the propofol into the house. Conrad Murray administered the propofol. Conrad Murray abandoned his patient. Conrad Murray failed to provide any monitoring equipment, resuscitative equipment, backup personnel. Conrad Murray failed to call 911. Conrad Murray is criminally liable for the death of Michael Jackson, not because it is Michael Jackson, but because Conrad Murray acted with criminal negligence. He was a substantial factor in the death of Michael Jackson. And I ask you to consider all the evidence in this case, to apply the law that the judge gave you, to work together as jurors and go through the evidence. And I trust you'll find that, again, although you have a very important role, at the end of the day, the issue of whether or not Conrad Murray was criminally negligent is not that complicated. This type of medical care has never been seen. This was a pharmaceutical experiment in a bedroom. I trust and I ask that you return with the only right verdict in this case, the only true verdict in this case, and the only just verdict in this case. I ask that you return with a verdict of guilty for the solitary count of involuntary manslaughter based on Conrad Murray's actions and his actions alone. Thank you.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn to your packet of written instructions, page 9. Page 9, post-trial concluding series. I'll give you a moment. When you go into the jury room to begin your deliberations, your first responsibility is to choose a foreperson. The foreperson should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized fashion, that every juror has a fair opportunity to express opinions, and that each juror is treated with respect and dignity. It is your duty to talk with one another and to deliberate in the jury room. You should try to agree on a verdict if you can. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but you should do so only after you have discussed the evidence with the other jurors. Do not hesitate to change your mind if you become convinced that you are wrong. However, do not change your mind just because other jurors disagree with you. Keep an open mind and freely exchange your thoughts and ideas about this case. Stating your opinions too strongly at the beginning or immediately announcing how you plan to vote may interfere with an open discussion. Please, treat one another courteously. Your role is to be an impartial judge of the facts, not to act as an advocate for one side or the other. Please continue to follow all of my written and verbal admonishments regarding your conduct, as I repeatedly have admonished you throughout these proceedings. Probably more than you wanted to hear me, but nevertheless, you understand it. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including but not limited to your spouse or other family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, spiritual leaders or advisors, therapists, spectators, or even total strangers. You must discuss the case only in the jury room and only when all 12 jurors and no other persons are present. Do not discuss your deliberations with anyone other than the other jurors during deliberations in the jury room. Do not access on your own, as a group, or through another person, any dictionary, any Bible, or the internet, or any other resource about this case outside of the evidence and the law presented in this courtroom. Do not access any internet website, including but not limited to any search engine sites such as Google, Ask, Bing, etc., or any social network site such as Facebook, MySpace, etc., or access any blogs, or post any messages or text or tweet anything about this case or the persons or subjects mentioned or involved in it. During the trial, several items were received into evidence as exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations. Certain exhibits will be sent into the jury room with you when you begin to deliberate. If you wish to see any other exhibits, please request them in writing. If you need to communicate with me while you are deliberating, send a note through the bailiff, signed by the foreperson or by one or more members of the jury. To have a complete record of this trial, it is important that you not communicate with me except by a written note. If you have questions, I must contact and speak with the attorneys before I answer. Therefore, it definitely will take a period of time for me to respond. Please.
The judge giving the jury the final instructions. The arguments are in. We are just around the corner from a verdict. That'll do it for Prime News. Jane Velez Mitchell's up next with full coverage. Have a great night, and don't forget to hug the kids.